Okay, this episode is already not off to a good start because I could not set my phone up for the life of me. I haven't recorded in my car in so long. It's been the last couple episodes I recorded at home because the weather has been so bad. But as you can see, it's very bright and sunny today, and I had a lot of free time. So I figured I would record today. And I've been meaning to record because there's just been something on my mind that I really want to talk about and I really want to share or I guess journal about. Before we get into that, welcome back to this week's podcast episode of This Is How You Heal. Follow on Instagram, whatever. Subscribe on Spotify for when I record next because now I really don't know since it's so sporadic. But yeah, make sure to follow along to see when I record next. What have I been up to lately? I've just had so much drama when it comes to work. I left my old job and I'm about to start a new job, so I've actually been unemployed for a period of my life, for a period of time, I mean literally 2 weeks. It's been nothing. But I am so excited about this new job opportunity I have coming up. And yeah, I kind of just want to talk about a little bit just what I've been doing now that, because basically I've been working full time literally since end of my freshman year of college, so a long time, and now I'm about to be a senior, and I pretty much just worked constantly, even throughout summers and winters and whatever. And so I really hadn't gone without a job, or there really hasn't been a period in my life where I did go without a job. I mean, I was always from one job to the next, and that was always something with me. I didn't feel comfortable leaving a job until I knew that I had another opportunity secured already, just for financial purposes. And also I don't know, it just gave me that sort of stability to have that sense or source of income. So anyway, this has been my first time being unemployed, no working, even part-time or anything, in a very, very long time. So it's been really nice. My sleep schedule is fucked up, but in a good way. And I'm really happy that I've had these couple weeks to just kind of be able to really be unemployed and be in college. And I really haven't had to just focus on school. I've always had school and work. So that was really nice too, to kind of get a feel for what my workload is actually because I feel it always feels so much more when I am working. So it was really nice to just kind of only have to focus on school, and I get to hang out with my friends so much more, and I get to do things during the day, during the week, which is honestly a lifesaver. I probably sound so stupid, but it is a fucking game changer that I can do things during the day, during the weekday. Are you kidding me? Because before I was so busy, I literally worked full time and then would go to class at night until 10 p.m. And then I'd have to go home and literally just get ready for bed, and that's it, pack my lunch for tomorrow and then wake up and do the same shit over again. And so I was on the road to just burning out so bad. And so I would have to stack up all my stuff to do on the weekends, grocery shop cleaning, whatever, if I want to hang out with my friends. So my weekends would get really, really stacked too. And I would do homework and stuff on the weekends too. And so to be able to just do stuff during the day on a weekday, I can do stuff, right now I'm filming this, it's a fucking Wednesday, and I can go to my Pilates at 1 p.m. I can have therapy in the morning, and I don't have to worry about if there's something that I want to do, I can go and do it. After I film this, I'm going to go on a walk at the Katy Trail, and it's 2 p.m. and it's just so nice. And I feel I definitely took that for granted when I did start working full time, because I didn't know how much of a commitment it would be with school and everything. So I'm really enjoying that. Out of everything, having to wake up, no alarm, I'm not rushing in the morning, I don't have meetings I'm taking on the way to work. It's so nice to just be able to build my own schedule and do really what I want to do with my day. But nonetheless, like I am excited for my new job. Like I'm so freaking excited. Because this is obviously something that I've been wanting for a while, and I mean, who doesn't love change? I've always been one of those people that really embraces change. Um, I think change is a good thing. So I'm really excited to see where this takes me and things like that. I'm really excited for the people I'm going to work with. Um, yeah, I'm really excited. And that literally starts on Monday. So my unemployment is coming to a close. So it's bittersweet. Like, I obviously like, being unemployed and doing nothing. But I also like having a routine of working and like balancing my life that way. And I mean, now I'm getting paid. I'm not just, money's not just going out. So I'm excited for that as well. And yeah, that's just been like recently. And yeah, so my life has been really kind of peaceful in like that aspect. And it felt like a really great refresh that I definitely like needed for sure. Which is a great segue into today's topic that I want to talk about because it's honestly like been on my mind like definitely a lot recently, but also like I feel like it's been on my mind, but I haven't ever really addressed it one to myself or even like really thought about it, and it's just been like coming up a lot recently. And so let's just like jump right into it. So lately, like to give some like backstory and give some context, um, I have talked about this in previous episodes, but when it comes to like my dating history and things like that, and then even just like socially, like with my social life, my family life, everything, my past was really rocky. It's not something I'm necessarily proud of, but it's not, I understand that it's still part of me without going into like the extreme details of like my past and everything, just like growing up in high school, whatever. Without going into all of the details, I know I've touched on it a little bit on the podcast, but there are still some things that I do want to keep private because it involves, other people, or it really is a touchy subject still for me myself, even though, I've grown into this completely other person. It's not always nice to have to like revisit those types of memories and things like that. But lately, I just feel like I find myself still reminiscing, or not reminiscing, like I will get flashes, like literally like flashbacks of my like past, and whether it be like something that I did or like something that happened to me, and it literally like makes me like cringe. Like I like I'll just be like washing my dishes, and then I'll like think of something, it'll come to my mind, and I'll literally like just stop and like I'll like go blank, and it either like makes me like cringe, or like I'm just like, oh, like it's not a good feeling. Like it gives me like this like awful, like unfulfilling, like sad, like disappointed feeling like in myself. Like, and I'm always like, why did I do that? Or like, why did I, even though I know that I'm not that person anymore, or like the judgments that I made back then are not always going to define me, and I feel like in my head sometimes I still like am hard on myself, and I try to, like my brain sometimes doesn't fully disconnect those parts of my life like back then versus now. And of course, I don't ever regret anything. Like I never say like I ever regret stuff. But, those moments and things that happened in the past built me into who I was today. I wouldn't have tried so hard to find a job and focus on school, whatever, if I didn't reach that low point in my life, I wouldn't be who I was today. So I've just been really trying to remind myself of that, because especially like recently, like I've had so much more alone time, like by myself. So I've just been really trying to remind myself again on trying to not fully disconnect myself from my past, but my past self and who I currently am, can coexist at one time. I don't have to like fully like claim like all the actions and stuff that I did in the past, but it still like hurts sometimes to think about. And I think that's what's so interesting too about why have I been like having these like flashbacks of like moments in my life that have like occurred. And I think it's really interesting that those moments still hold so much like power and like feeling and emotion like in my life, even though some of the things that I think about or that pop into my head literally happened like 4, 5, 6 years ago. And I'll just randomly like think about it, or not randomly, but it will pop into my head and I'll think about it. And I'll just think about, I'll just bring myself down. Like, why did I do that? Why am I thinking about this? Like, and I just never want to get to a point to where I'm like almost shaming myself for what happened, because it's like I almost forget that because it was so long ago. Like, I forget what I was thinking. Why did I do that? What was I going through? Like, why was I doing all these actions? Why was I like putting myself in this position to clearly get hurt and to clearly like a good outcome is not going to come from this? Instead of just like, blatantly being like, oh, and like shunning it away and being like, like that's like in the past, which even though it is, I still think what is bothering me so much is that, I really don't acknowledge it to a certain extent when it comes to, especially in therapy or like my healing, like now, I feel like being able to reflect on your past so often is definitely a skill for sure. I mean, because no one wants to think about those type of things, whether it be about yourself or whether it be about other people, no one ever wants to revisit hard times and hard memories in their life. That's just not something that's fun, and that it hurts you like emotionally and like mentally, and it's draining. And so to have these moments kind of come up, I think it really just made it more clear to me that, oh, maybe like this is important and maybe I should like revisit this. Why is this thing that I did, or why is this moment in my life, when it comes into my head, why does it bother me so much? Because obviously there are some memories, I think, when we fully get over something and we fully, emotionally recover from something, when we think about it, there's no emotion still attached to it. So, which is why I think it's so interesting when these things and these memories pop into my head that I just get so emotional about it. Or like it's instant for me to get into my like fight or flight. Like, oh, like I don't want to think about that. I just like shove it down again, which, I'm definitely think is something important for me to revisit, which is why I think it's such an important topic that I really, really want to talk about. Just like getting these revisitations from like your past, like, whether, no matter like what it be, and there's always like this idea of like your past like coming back to haunt you, or like it's like, the things you do are gonna come bite you in the butt or whatever, or karma exists, which, you may think like, it exists to an extent or it doesn't, that's all up to the person. But I mean, I think it's hard for everyone to just always kind of think about, things that we're ashamed of in the past and things that we've done that we're not necessarily like proud of and want to put on a pedestal. And I think it's harder for me just because I really don't want to associate myself with that person, and those things that I did, because I don't want, to be perceived as that person and perceived that way. And I don't want people to judge me, like, duh, that's what everyone wants. Like, no one wants to be judged, like, at the end of the day, and even though now what's so different is that, those things wouldn't bother me, like, if, let's say, like, obviously the decisions I make today are much different than the decisions I made in the past, and my mindset around all the decisions I make has changed, and that's what I have to remind myself, that my brain when I was 15, 16 is not the same as the brain that I have right now. And, I can't let those actions and things that I did define the person that I am now, because it's a different person. But I think there's a way, or there has to be like a happy medium of, I can acknowledge this and this happened in my past. And I think that's what's so hard when it comes to coming to terms with yourself, or when it comes to even growing older. Like, what's so hard about that is that you have all these things and these moments and these building blocks of your life that have kind of built you, again, like into the person that you are now, no matter how old you are or how young you are, whatever. And, you know, we often just try and focus on the future. I try to focus on the future, you know, and we always just try to shove everything to the past and to the back of our mind, like even right now, like, you know, or I find myself thinking that way around like my birthday, like too, like whenever my birthday comes around, like I'm always like, oh, like, you know, this year is gonna be a new year, like I'm gonna focus on this, you know, everything like doesn't matter. I distinctly remember actually when it was my 19th birthday. No, it was gonna be my 20th birthday. I was 19. Like that year for me, I was always like, oh, like this is my last year to like fuck around because I'm not going to be a teenager anymore and there's no excuse, you know? And I think that puts so much pressure on me as a 20-year-old of being like, okay, like no more mistakes, you know, you can't make any more mistakes because you're not a teenager anymore, which is highly unrealistic. Like, may I just say, like, obviously that is not how I should view, one, the past version of myself, which, you know, 19, 18, 17, whatever in the past, and then also trying to place my higher self on such a high like pedestal when, you know, life is like life. I fear like life is like, it's gonna do whatever, like whatever happens, you know. And so to kind of just set such a high expectation, and you know, setting a very low expectation is the same thing, you know. Like, I think what's so hard about growing up is stepping into life with no expectations of yourself, of your friends, of your family, of everything. And but I think that's the key. Like, honestly, like I think we all I would be so much happier if I did just step into life with no expectations, even of my past as well, you know, because the only reason I'm having these feelings of like, oh, my past self has let me down is because, you know, I did set an expectation for myself in the past. Right now, I set an expectation for myself when I was 17, 18, and I didn't meet that, you know. When I was 17, 18, I should have been doing XYZ, but instead I was doing blah, 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 you know, and that is like sad and doesn't make me feel good about myself, you know. And if you think about it, it will always be like that. Like, it'll always be like, for example, I'm 21 right now. When I turn 22, I hope I'm XYZ. Oh, but, you know, when I was 21, I was doing, you know, who knows what. And I feel like there's always such a negative connotation, like, around it. And then same thing with, like, our past, too. When it comes to reminiscing on the past, like, there's such a negative feeling, like, connotation surrounding the idea of reflecting on one's past. You know, like whenever like someone wants to bring up something from the past or revisit something from the past, it's never good. Whenever like I look back at old photos and things like that, like yes, I remember the good times, but it's also like, you know, that came with like really shitty times too. And I think where I lose focus is that I don't remember that those things are so crucial and were so substantial into me becoming this better person that I wanted to be. And I think that applies in any phase of life. Like when I turn 30 something, you know, like I don't want to look back on the years of my 20s and be like, oh, like, you know, she was so wild and crazy and, you know, like, like, I'm so ashamed. I would never want to be ashamed of what I did in my 20s, you know? And so if I feel that way about the years that I'm living right now, why wouldn't I feel that way about the years that I'm living in my past or when I lived in my past, you know? Like, if I'm making all these decisions right now and I wouldn't be ashamed of it, you know, why would that change in like 3, 4, 5 years when I look back on my life? And I think that's why there's so many hard feelings surrounding like everyone's like past and when it comes to like reflecting on those type of things. And you know, it's just really sad. And I wish it was more normalized. And I think something that I'm going to work on in my own life too is trying to normalize kind of those feelings and normalize, like, you know, when I do get these like flashbacks of my like life and things that have happened to me or things that I've done, you know, it's important to remember that, you know, and not just push it down and push it away like right away. I don't think that's correct either, but to acknowledge it. I think acknowledgement is the key, like honestly, when it comes to things in our past and even in the present too, like acknowledging like how far, you know, we've come as like people and how those actions and things in the past kind of shaped who we are currently and who we are now, because it really does have such a big effect on it. And then I just would never, I know, like me when I was 16, would never want my 21-year-old self to look back at what I was doing and be ashamed. You know, regardless of what I did back then, regardless of who was involved, whatever, you know, I know like if 16-year-old me would see me now and see that I was so ashamed of like the things that I was doing back then, like that's like heart shattering, you know? And that's what I think plays tricks on like our minds to think so negatively about things that we've done in the past. And so I've been trying recently to just like kind of make this like more positive like mindset surrounding like when it comes to reflecting on my past and things like that. So that way when it does come to the forefront of my mind, I'm not immediately just like wincing or like cringing at like, you know, whatever I'm thinking about. But instead, the mindset I have is, you know, to embrace the fact that I'm thinking about it. You know, I feel like normally my reaction is just like to push it away or like I'll like shake my head and like try and think about something else. But no, I feel like I do need to acknowledge like why am I thinking about these things and continue and have that full thought and finish out the thought versus like, you know, if this thought is coming to my head and I'm not like, you know, and I immediately push it down, of course it's going to come back up. Of course it's going to resurface like one day or eventually, you know, if it's about processing. And if I never process that idea or like that feeling, I never will. You're never going to. If you never address like how you felt, whether it be in that moment or if you don't address it later on with yourself, by the way, not with anyone else, like your body and your mind has to process things. And if you never get there fully, it's never really, really going to go away. The emotion's not fully going to detach ever. And so what I've been trying to do recently is just, you know, when these thoughts occur, to just embrace it and to think about it. You know, if I think about, you know, something that happened when I was 16, you know, I think about it and I'm not thinking in the way where I'm like, oh, like, why did I do that? Or like, why was this so stupid? Like, I replay the memory, you know, I live through it again. I replay it and I think about, you know, why am I thinking about this? How did I feel in that moment versus how am I feeling right now? You know? And I think it's important to remind ourselves too that those moments are just moments. You know, it's not like that memory is going to come back and replay itself. It's not like history is going to repeat itself, you know? And so that's why I think it's also important to really process these things, or else it can kind of cause you to get kind of stuck in a loop. Because honestly, that happened to me and it made me start to spiral. Like I was just thinking about something and then I was like, what if this happens again? Or like, oh my God, like I really am such a horrible person. Like, why would I do that? You know, and it can cause you to spiral and become something more than it needs to be. And so I think what's going to be super important to me when it comes to kind of processing those moments that like pop into my head is, being able to fully articulate what I'm thinking about and why it's coming to the forefront of my mind. Is it because, maybe I'm not fully over it. Maybe I forgot about this that happened, because I've been so ashamed. And that's why it's coming to the forefront of my mind. And once you kind of acknowledge that, the thought almost goes away on its own. Like, I find like it is really like a full circle, like, moment. And once the thought kind of passes on its own, like, you're not trying to like push it away. Like, once the thought kind of passes on its own and you naturally stop thinking about it, that's really when the processing finishes. I feel like it's not when, if you're trying to like cut out the thought yourself, because if anything, that's more like hurtful than if you were to just let it pass like naturally. So I've been really just trying to work on that and letting all these thoughts pass naturally and not let it, kind of dictate how I formulate my thoughts now, and not let it dictate, how I view myself now, because, again, those are things that happen in the past, and my past self, obviously is built on all those things in those instances, but, that's not fully 100% of the person that I am, and a lot can change in like years. And I think that's also something that tends to slip my mind when those thoughts come and go. I just think about, I just tend to lose the idea of how much that I've changed, or like how much I've grown and things like that. Like, instantly when I think about things from my past, that slips out the window. And I think that's something that I also need to bring to the forefront, when I start to think about all these bad instances, hey, what have I done like recently in my life to like, make me such a better person, and actively thinking about, okay, well, I already know that these moments were not my proudest moments in my life, but, now I do this, and now I do this, and now, I do this in my life. And like being able to reflect on your present as well, and not comparing it to your past, but seeing how you got from point A to point B, and kind of seeing like how you were able to like grow and see how it affected your change up until now. And I think that's really important and something to not lose sight of when it comes to your past kind of overtaking or trying to overtake your mind. Like, it can be very hard to kind of lose sight of who you are currently in the present and not just focus on the past. And the past will always be there, and I think when it comes to reflecting on the past too, it ultimately helps you to build into a better person. Because if you never reflect on those moments, how are you ever going to change? How are you ever going to like fully like be a better person if you don't think about what actually happened, and if you don't actually think about what you're changing from, or like why you're changing? Obviously, like, the things that are in the past are what you're not running from, but that's the only like scenario I can think of, or the things that you're running from, or the things you want to change and not be a part of anymore, right? And so, especially when it comes to present healing, I think that's really important, and being able to talk about it, whether it be to yourself or even to other people, and like therapy too. Like, I think it's really important to not be scared of your own past, and that's something that took me so many years to like kind of learn. And then even now, I still get these little sparks, or these little like, reminders in my head, but dealing with those is so much different than, if you were in the active process of like getting over these things versus like, getting like a flashback here and there. So I think there's just so many different processes and ways to like think about like when it comes to healing from your past, and genuinely would someone ever heal from their past entirely or completely? I don't know. That's a really like hard question. Like me personally, I don't think I ever will. And when it comes to things that I've done in my past, even if it's 4 or 5 years, if it's still relevant to who I am currently, like I I pride myself on the fact that, I think it's important to be able to mention things that have happened in my past when it comes to people I'm being friends with or when it comes to new relationships I'm trying to start. Just having that honesty, because I think being honest with other people helps you to be honest with yourself too. And even when I remember, like, and I talked about this in one of my previous podcast episodes, but I mean, no one's going to believe anything about you if you don't believe it about yourself. And that's definitely like a value that I hold. If I really want to not be that person that I was in the past, I have to believe that first. I can't try and put on this facade and present myself to other people how I want to be portrayed, right? But I'm really not like that. That's not how that works, because that's fake. That's just fake, like at the end of the day. And I think it's just about being honest with yourself, with other people. When you have these flashbacks, it's about being honest with yourself. Like, why am I thinking about that? Not trying to hide from that part of yourself or from that part of your mind, but instead, embracing it and really analyzing your own thoughts and opening yourself up to feeling that emotion and to feeling those feelings from the past, but in your present self, and processing it that way. Because even, now, like, I'm going to do things now. I'm 21. And then maybe when it comes to when I'm 30, I'm going to think about these feelings and these, like, things that have happened in my 20s. And I'm going to think about them and they're going to resurface somehow. And instead of, trying to compare my 30-year-old self to my 21-year-old self, I'm thinking about how these actions are going to affect my 30-year-old self, in the sense of how did it grow me into the person that I am today. And that's really what I wanted to talk about was, when these flashbacks happen, how to kind of combat them and how to kind of walk yourself actively like through these thoughts and through these emotions versus like, crumbling under the pressure, because I think that's what I was doing. But it's not a good feeling, again. So I've just been really trying to like analyze when these thoughts happen, what's really going on like in my head, and why are these thoughts coming to the forefront. And I think that's really something that will help me when it comes to reminiscing on my past and not being ashamed of the things that I've done in the past, because I think there's always still work that's going to happen when it comes to, always trying to be a better person. So, yeah, honestly, I think that's the end of today's episode. If there's something you want to hear me talk about, or if you want advice on something, or if you want to hear me chit-chat about something and you have a topic in mind, please let me know. Leave it in the comments, or, you can message me on Instagram through the Instagram account. All the links are going to be in the description. And I will see you guys next time, whenever that is. And thank you so much for listening to This Is How You Heal.